Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the Cabarrus County Board of Commissioners for our work session for January the 6th, 2014. Welcome to all of those in the audience. We appreciate you all being here today. As a reminder, if you have a mobile device of any kind, please put it on silent or vibrate so that it doesn't go off during the meeting. We would appreciate it. Also, Commissioners, I know you know, but for the public, Commissioner Burridge is not able to be with us today. I'm sure that he will sit at home and watch this as soon as it plays. I know that's what we do all the time. So, nonetheless, but we will go ahead and begin. At this time, the first thing that we need to do is approve the agenda. You do have some changes, Commissioners, that are noted page 97 on your agenda. So at this time, I'd accept a motion to approve the work session agenda with the changes. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second? A motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, first we have discussion items for no action. Happy to welcome Noel Scott here with the Cabarrus Arts Council for a presentation.
Women, I appreciate it. This is the time that I like to come and just say thank you mid-year for your support. To let you know what we're doing with your support. Thank you also for the use of the beautiful historic courthouse building. As those of you all who are around then remember, in 2005, the county commissioners allowed us to move in. We raised a little bit over $400,000 to create galleries and the Davis Theater. This past year, we upgraded the theater with $20,000 more that we had raised. And we now, this past year, had over 20,000 people who walked through the doors. And we're really pleased with that. The use of the galleries, the art walks, the theater, and of course all of the programs that we have in the schools. And so if it pleases you, I'd love to play you just our video to remind you of what we do.
The Cabarrus Arts Council serves all the people of Cabarrus County and attracts visitors to our community. Our outstanding programs will draw 300,000 participants this year. All ages, all races, all income levels. A wide variety of Arts Council programs means there's something for everyone. Performances, art exhibitions, education, art walks, grants that support arts across the community. The Cabarrus Arts Council created a Center for the Arts in the historic Cabarrus Courthouse. Over 11,000 people see outstanding artwork at the galleries each year. People enjoy getting to know the artist and seeing them demonstrate their creative techniques. School groups, scout troops, and other young people love the challenge of the I Spy scavenger hunt in the galleries. Professional touring productions wow audiences in the Davis Theater. Outstanding regional musicians play bluegrass, jazz, and country music to enthusiastic Davis Theater audiences. Modern Film Fest at the Davis screens free movies each month. The Arts Council is dedicated to educating our children. Almost 30,000 students and teachers see curriculum-related performances every year. All Cabarrus and Kannapolis schools and many private schools participate in Students Take Part in the Arts. Many of our students would never see live music, drama, dance, opera, storytelling, and poetry without these programs. Students visit the galleries' exhibitions regularly. Arts education develops analytical minds and our leaders of tomorrow. The Arts Council is integral to our community. Downtown Concord art walks are a favorite activity for people across the region. 5 times a year, people come to enjoy art, meet artists, listen to live music, eat at restaurants, and browse in shops. Our grants support performing and visual arts programs across the community, as well as individual artists. Cabarrus Art Guild, the Choral Academy, North Carolina Music Hall of Fame, Old Courthouse Theater, Piedmont Choral Society, Southern Piedmont Woodturners, the Kannapolis Outdoor Performance Series, including the spectacular July 4th Symphony Concert, Concord Downtown Development Corporation's Union Street Live concerts, and Spring Into Arts Festival. Logan Community Daycare's music lessons for at-risk children. Hospice and palliative care of Cabarrus County's interlude music program. Multicultural Student Union's dance program for at-risk youth. Our community is an interesting place to live and visit because of the arts. Through school performances, the galleries, Davis Theater, art walks, grants, partnerships. The Cabarrus Arts Council energizes our community through arts excellence.
Our board and staff truly appreciate your leadership and your guidance, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Commissioners, any questions?
I don't have any questions. I would just like to say that, I always enjoy myself whenever I go over to the historic courthouse, and I think you guys have utilized the space very well. And I know I was at a performance last month, and I was very impressed. And thanks for being part of Cabarrus County and adding to downtown Concord.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, next we have a report. Kyle Billifer and Aaron Newton are here. We're going to talk about the Rotary Square project update.
Good evening. Just wanted to give the board an update of where the group is at in terms of the architect and the general contractor that's been chosen by the Rotary Group, and of course the Rotary Group and downtown folks that we've been meeting with. The next slide, Megan, if you'll go to it, will show that's pretty much what the conceptual design is. We'll be meeting this week to go over what the proposed costs are. Obviously, the county is not providing any type of financing for this, but everything that goes into the materials in terms of how the structure is built, what it's built of, we're having a lot of input in. I've been reviewing submittals for light fixtures, brick, everything, so they can get a pretty good cost on. We've taken a couple field trips and looked at different water features throughout Charlotte, and actually we were with the equivalents for the Charlotte. They have a whole group that does nothing but water features, so we had some field trips with them and took a look at designs that didn't work so well and designs that did. So we kind of have an idea of what we're going to go forward with, and that's that circle in the middle. And there'll be some dancing fountains in different types of positions that'll be activated by a push button, so it won't run continuously unless somebody's in there. That's what you see in the more modern spray features in Charlotte and in other areas. And Aaron is up here to kind of talk about the input from the farmers market. I think we've addressed everybody's needs in terms of fencing, security, the water feature, the actual farmers market shelter itself, and also the one thing that was not brought up and we didn't know when we first started this project was that there will be a small restroom facility, and that a one-person unisex restroom facility that'll be required by building code only when the farmers market is in session. I can offer any comments on it, but there's a bunch of different views. If you'll go through the slides, it'll kind of give you guys a different idea of how it all looks. Obviously, we're playing with a pretty big different grade that's at that square. You wouldn't know it, but if you drove from one side to the other or walked it, there's a pretty good significant grade change. So they'll be putting in some test pits this week to try to see what type of soil we've got in there and what we're going to have to excavate and what we're going to be able to keep. Some of the things that are in there are obviously just for view right now. We don't know exactly where all the trees are going to go. We don't know that there's going to be a statue or a monument there, but we're leaving space for all of that in the future to grow into. But what the actual structure will look like, that is the look that we've agreed upon to make it kind of match the existing jail that stands right beside it. So any questions for me on structure or layout of it before I turn it over to Aaron?
Any questions on the structure? Chris?
Looking at the photographs, I'm assuming the restroom's going to be closest to the sheriff's department. Is that correct? That
It's actually closest to the jail annex, which is,
Okay, yes.
represents more of a cost to them, but the thought process while you're driving along Union Street, you want to be able to look inside the structure and see what's going on, see what type of farmers market. So, but obviously in terms of the construction side, it is cheaper to build it closer to Union Street because that's where all your sewer and water tie-offs are. Right. But you are correct, it will be closest to the jail annex. There will also be, there possibly could be a small storage room there, and there definitely will be what I guess we'd call a mechanical, electrical, and plumbing room, where your controls for the actual water feature will be and your main electrical panel.
Okay. And there's still no plans for benches, correct? I noticed that in the slideshow. But
That there was no benches there?
Yes.
Yes, I make sure that I'm at every meeting so benches don't end up there.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes.
Kyle, my only question was, you had mentioned safety, and that's a pretty busy intersection
Yes.
in terms of traffic.
Yes.
I have not talked to you previously about this, so you might have answered this question before already. It does look like the grade around the edge will provide some safety in terms of a child running out into the
Yeah.
street, but are you comfortable with that?
The corner of where Union and Corbin meet, if could you go back one slide, please? I'm sorry, one more. And one more. There you go. If you kind of look at what that fencing and that gating is, that was the real reason that's there, is because I envisioned somebody chasing a ball or having wet feet and running and not being able to stop. So that is why that's there. So yes, I am comfortable with what's there. Now, with some of those brick pedestals, and obviously this is a conceptual layout, a lot of it has to do with cost. Every one of those brick pillars you see in between those fences, that costs money. So I'll know better after this week about exactly what's going to end up there. But that would be a place where someone could sit, and that's one of the comments I've had is, can we do something different, a little bit of a terraced look where, it kind of slopes up so you couldn't sit on it and you wouldn't have those type of areas, as I know that was a concern of the board. But yes, to answer your question, I am comfortable with the safety of it.
When you talked about the slope, because that does slope back pretty well from front to
Towards,
back.
yes.
Are you looking at making that not so severe, or it's just that the farmer's market would be on a lower plateau and then it would
Yes.
still slope up just
Yes,
like it is now?
you will literally, the way we've had it designed is you will step into it. And the reason that we can't just, you have a lot of ADA concerns that we have to do there with the walkways and everything, and there will be a part in the back corner of the jail annex where our breakaway fence is for the fire trucks that we will have to have some sort of small step-down wall, not a retaining wall, but there will be a grade change.
Aaron, you want to add about the farmer's market?
Certainly, absolutely, and this is planned as a multi-use facility, of course, but the farmers market has been involved from the beginning in planning to move here to offer a market on Wednesdays and again on Saturdays seasonally as we figure out what the demand means. The current permanent structure offers a maximum of 19 spaces for vendors. We've planned for an additional 14 spaces in a coordinated tent structure that would be just outside of the permanent structure. This would be a tent structure that would get set up at the beginning of a market and then broken down at the end. That's sort of us planning for growth so that we can make some decisions about site development ahead of time rather than having to go back and retrofit and have added cost to additional vendors. So that would put us at a maximum of 35 vendors for the space, which would be enough to have a really robust market there. The market that currently operates seasonally, May through approximately the end of September, on Market Street outside of the police department, would move to this location, and then Piedmont Farmers Market would develop a Saturday market as well. Piedmont Farmers Market, I mentioned, they're a nonprofit organization, almost 30 years old, one of the longest continuously running farmers markets in the state of North Carolina, actually. So this is an organization with a great history of running markets. They just approved their budget for 2014 this past December, which includes, for the third year, a full-time market manager. So that organization is going to the trouble to pay a staff member to be at all of the markets, including these markets, to make sure that things are set up the way they should, run and operate the way they should during the market, and then are closed up and shut down the way that they should. So they feel comfortable about their ability to make that part of this project very successful.
Any questions about the farmer's market aspect?
Well, does this structure have the capability of any type of curtains or so that they can operate longer on colder weather, or maybe that demand's not there? Maybe they don't have the products then.
Well, we do have now, for the third year running, a full-time market on Saturdays at the Winecoff location.
Year-round.
Year-round, and I was
Right.
there on Saturday morning, and it was below freezing, and there was quite a robust. I had one of my vendors tell me if this had been a market during 2013, it would have been his sixth best market of the entire year.
Wow.
So there are still people coming out, even if they're having to put on a coat and jacket and brave the elements. It does not have a design feature that would allow us to close it off. That even just a basic look at that, it seems cost prohibitive to be able to condition that space during parts of the year.
Right.
But I think if it is successful enough, you'll see markets go there deep into the winter and open up early in the spring, if not year-round, and still get a robust group out there of customers.
We
Thank
did
you.
look at the option of enclosed roll-up doors, and it got to the point where it was getting pretty expensive.
Right.
And it is a bit maintenance prohibitive in a space that is not going to be secure.
Right.
When I believe Mike had said that, or maybe Kyle had said that the Rotary Club was going to pay for all of the park. Are they paying for all of this, or is the county paying for some of it?
The funding is actually supplied by Rotary, has raised the money for that, and then Piedmont Farmers Market has made a major contribution, the Cannon Foundation, and the North Carolina Tobacco Trust Fund. So the only contribution by the county is the use of the land, and then, of course, Kyle, my staff time, and Aaron's time.
Great, thank you.
And Wasac is doing the tap.
That's right. So
and some of the
the
sewer.
agreement to operate this is between Piedmont Farmers Market, the City of Concord, Cabarrus County, and the Water and Sewer Authority of Cabarrus County.
And if I could add one thing, there's also been considerable donations by private citizens to the overall effort.
And that was the Rotary funding, and they've achieved their goal. I don't know that they would turn down donations if people still want to provide some, but they have achieved their goal. So we're and at this point, I think Kyle, I'm not sure if he mentioned that Ken Griffin with Griffin Architecture is the architect, and CM Black, particularly Justin Black, is the general contractor.
So if we want to be optimistic and presume that the cost will come in at a good price that's suitable to the Rotary Club and all the partners in this, what kind of a timeline are we looking at that construction might begin and that we would look to have it open and occupied? Do you have any idea?
The
We won't hold you
optimistic.
to it.
Okay,
Let's just be
all right.
optimistic and think
Well,
it'll
with
work.
that caveat, and being an optimist myself, we're looking at a potential groundbreaking in late March, early April, and we would love to have this facility complete by the end of June. That is an optimistic time frame that you said you wouldn't hold me to, but that's what we're shooting for. We would love to be able to have some warmer months open for the market before we get into next fall and winter.
I think based on today, we'd just like to have some warmer months, so that sounds like a good idea. But you're right, we would not hold you to that, because I know there are a lot of aspects of this that you guys have been working on. So thank you very much for everything. Does anybody have any other questions? Thank you both very much. The next item that we have is a QSCB update from Cabarrus County Schools. Lynn Whitkey is here, I believe. Oh, I'm sorry, Dave Burnett's here. And we have a number of school system people. I think we have a quorum for the school board here, possibly. Don't worry, we won't let you conduct any business here today, so you'll be safe. And welcome superintendent and school board members and staff members that are here today with us for the different conversations that we're going to have. Okay, Dave.
Thank you. And we're just about wrapping up the QSCB projects. We've got 5 that are remaining. Actually, one of those we just closed out with the final check being mailed to the contractor. So that's the Central Cabarrus High School. Northwest Cabarrus High School gym addition and the Mount Pleasant High School boiler replacement, and really the Concord High School weight room building. Those are all substantially complete. They're all being used for their intended purpose. We are trying to exhaust the QSCB funds on those projects with change orders on items that really we wanted to have in those projects, but kind of reserve the money. But now we're able to complete those items. So those change order items are still in the works. Paving was one at Northwest High School, and that work was accomplished over the Christmas break. Still, there's much more paving needs. I don't want anybody to think that that satisfied the paving needs at that school. Jumping down to J.N. Freeze Middle School, it's a roof replacement that is underway. We're anticipating that will complete in the next couple weeks. We don't see any issues with the April 1st date.
Okay, commissioners, any questions on these projects or anything to do with the QSCBs? Okay. Thank you very much. Good to hear that you're moving along on all of them. Okay, commissioners, the next items that we have are discussion items for action, for potential action at our meeting in 2 weeks. The first one that we have is the first 3 are resolutions that we've received from Cabarrus County Schools. The first one before us is staff compensation. Dr. Shepard, do you and Kelly, Kathy want to come up? And we'll do each of these individually, okay?
Madam Chair, before we move forward with the next 3 items regarding the school system, I think it'd be a good opportunity to give you an opportunity to recuse yourself from any discussion or votes regarding these items with the school system, citing that you're a full-time employee of the school system and that would present a conflict of interest.
The only one that I will ask for a recusal on is about staff compensation, and that'll be done in 2 weeks because we won't have a motion today.
Okay. But
I've already checked with our attorney on the proper procedure as far as that goes. You actually have to vote to recuse me.
right, so that
It's
would
not
be
a given.
a vote and recusal from the vote and discussion?
No, I'm allowed to discuss.
Okay.
I just can't vote on anything because we're not doing any action today.
Right, I understand, but I
Yeah.
wasn't sure if the discussion would be a conflict of interest as well. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Right. Thank you. Madam Chairman, I want to recognize our board members that are in attendance with me here today. Our chairman, Mr. Blake Kiger, Vice Chairman Barry Shoemaker, and board member Lynn Shue, and are there others that have come in behind? I just want to thank them here for their support today. Good number of staff members as well. I want to also thank the County Commission for receiving this request. And as you said, we have 3 requests. The first is for staff compensation, and I have with me here our Chief Financial Officer, Kelly Klotz, and our Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, Kathy Auger. And we'll begin with discussions for staff compensation and then answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. I also want to thank you for allowing us to be here and provide you with this information and make this request. Unfortunately, probably the best way for me to give you this information is just for me to read some bullets here on the resolution. I don't want to leave anything out, and I think the resolution is written very well. So I'm just going to read some of the points in the resolution. Again, this is for staff compensation. The first point is that performance expectations for Cabarrus County school employees has never been higher. Funding cuts and freezes left the school employees without any raise between 2008 and 2012. Between 2008 and 2013, cost of living has increased 9.7%. Although the state provided a 1.2% increase in 2012-2013, no increase was provided for 2013 and 2014. It is necessary to provide fair and competitive wages to school employees in order to maintain excellent public schools in Cabarrus County. Employees of Cabarrus County who did not work for the school system received a cumulative total of 12% cost of living during the same fiscal years and merit pay for exemplary job performance during 3 of the 7 years. So therefore, Cabarrus County Board of Education unanimously resolves the request that the Board of Commissioners provide $2,935,500 in operating funds so that all school employees can receive the equivalent of 1.5% increase in salary through an adjustment to their salary, supplement, or both, effective immediately. So, and I'm going to let Ms. Auger make some statements, and then we'll address any questions or concerns that you have.
Good evening. I want to state that Cabarrus County is such a wonderful place to work in. I believe we have a family feeling of inclusiveness. I believe you as commissioners and the school district provide a supportive culture, and employees want to be here. They want to be in this county. Recently, people that we have tried to recruit and employees that we have are telling us that the balance is tipping. They have to feed their children, they have to clothe their children, they have to provide housing. And it is having a significant impact on us. This past year, our turnover rate increased in a significant manner. We lost 242 teachers. Many of those may be your children's teachers. We want to give the best teacher to every child. We want to give a great bus driver to every child. We want to give a great principal to every child. And we are at truly, as employees have told us, a tipping point on this. And I do believe that your vote tonight and your discussion on this will make a difference for the future of the children in our county.
Okay. Let's start some general discussion. There's kind of 2 parts, if you will, because these are requests from Cabarrus County Schools. We have not received anything from Kannapolis City Schools or from Rowan Cabarrus Community College. So if we'll focus on their request first, and then we'll probably have some additional discussion along that line. So concerning the staff compensation, Steve, do you want to start?
Sure. Well, thank you for bringing this information to us. Yeah, I have also tried to do a little research and get some other information, looking at, and I think this is 2010, 2011 local salary supplements, and there may be more current figures available, but at that point in time, I think Cabarrus County Schools was number 55 in the state, which is just about in the middle of 115 school systems. I think that's the correct number. I see that Rowan Salisbury is ahead of us at that time, as is Iredell, Statesville, Union County, Mooresville City, and then of course Charlotte Mecklenburg is significantly higher than we are. You know, we're all concerned about keeping our taxes as low as possible, but I think this is one of the most important assets that we have in Cabarrus County, and that's our children. It's been my pleasure to visit in, I think, 4 schools in the last month or so, and plan to visit another one tomorrow, and I've been extremely impressed with what I've seen as far as not necessarily always the facilities. Some of them are impressive, some of them not so much so. But the teachers and their spirit and what they're trying to do is extremely important. And yeah, I would be inclined to support this resolution. I think that we do not live in a bubble. We have to pay attention to what's going on around us. And when we look at I would imagine we've got folks that can live in Cabarrus County and enjoy all the wonderful things here and still work in the Mecklenburg County school system if the gap is that large, and it's pretty significant right now. So I think this is something that we need to do, and if we're going to remain competitive and get the kind of folks and educate our children the way that we want them to be educated, I think it's important that we take care of our teachers and our school administrators and staff members. So that's my take on the situation. Thank you.
Chris?
I just have a couple questions. In this breakdown, I know I've seen a couple of different numbers regarding the certified and non-certified. What are the exact numbers on that, again, just so we're all aware?
Mm-hmm. 1 second, please. For certified, it's $2,250,000, and so all others would be $685,500
Okay.
for a total of 2.9355.
Okay. Yeah, I do believe that. I think everyone knows that teachers are drastically underpaid, and I think that it's something that we can do as commissioners to help the teachers in Cabarrus County by giving them their supplement increase from what we can do. Now, I know the state of North Carolina pays majority of their salary, but we do have this opportunity to give them that extra, and I think that any money we can send directly into the classrooms, I'm all for that. I want to see our teachers succeed and stay in Cabarrus County school system, and ultimately our students will succeed from that. So I do support increase for the teacher supplement pay.
Well, I certainly support increases for the teacher supplement pay, but I think we need to have a plan. I mean, there's really, nobody has a plan for how we're going to build the schools. I went to the, we'll get into this, but, the schools have tremendous needs, and nobody has a plan other than to go out and borrow all this money to meet those needs. And that is going to, just the first bond, they're talking about multiple bonds, are going to spike our debt service payment by almost 25%, $9.3 million. So that $9.3 million, if we go out and borrow that and have to incur that debt service payment, that's coming from the same place that this $3 million would come from for teacher operations. So that's $12 million, and that's just the first bond. So while we can all sit here and say, well, I support this, somebody's got to tell me where we're going to get the money from to do this. And so far, I haven't heard anybody have any plan in terms of how to do this. I have proposed a plan by which we could not borrow $1, and then we would have the money to do things like this. I would say that I believe that our county and our Board of Education has done a very poor job of prioritizing teacher pay. I think we have prioritized building these glamorous buildings. While I have heard it said several times by the Board of Education that we are 114th in total ADM, which is a combination of federal and state, which are very poorly funded, this county provides the number 7th best funding in terms of facility of any county in the state of North Carolina, and that's not talked about. And what that means is that we have far over prioritized these glamorous buildings at the expense of our teachers, and I don't want to do that anymore. I have, as I've mentioned before, I've gone to several schools since I've started here. I have talked to teachers, I have talked to principals, I have talked to parents. The thing that makes a difference in education is the teachers. It's not the building. We've got old buildings, we've got new buildings. I asked a principal of a new school, 2 weeks ago, and he said, well, we have 2 buildings. I said, well, why don't you just do you find that the learning is significantly different at this school? She was previously she was at one of our older schools, a very older school. I said, do you find that the education is much different in this glamorous new facility? And you know what she said? No, it's the exact same curriculum. So we need to stop wasting money on glamorous facilities, put the money into our teachers, and let's really get moving, because we are falling behind. We came out, was it 40%, Dr. Shepard, of our third graders can't read? These fancy facilities are not making our third graders read. Teachers will make our children read, and we need to prioritize them. That being said, I don't understand why we're in the second semester of the school year and we're talking about this now. We've got our budget discussions coming up in 15 days, and this seems far more appropriate. We haven't gotten anything from Kannapolis City Schools. We haven't gotten anything from RCCC. It just seems like we get a barrage. Every single month we're getting a different request from the school system, and I don't understand it. 2 months ago we got a request for $250,000 to build a synthetic turf field. Now they knew that they had these issues, but they didn't bring them up then so that we could deal with them comprehensively. They keep trickling them in so that we get stuck looking at one and we can't come up with a plan. And what we need to do is come up with a plan for how to address this and stop doing this on a one-time basis, because now that that $250,000 is gone, and that would have been money that we could have given to the teachers, and now we don't have it because we've already voted on that. Why are we looking at this right now? It doesn't make any sense to me. There's 4 months to go in the school year.
I will address your question of why we're looking at it right now. The reason we're looking at it is that they have passed a resolution and asked us to talk about it, and that's why it's on our agenda. And that's why it hit now, because that's what they've asked us to do. As far as all three of these go, and that's the reason, since they made the request that it be on our agenda, it is. My comments would be, I will ask to be recused. That is a vote. It is not an automatic. You can decide to allow me to recuse myself, or you can decide to allow me to vote. If this comes up, or any of these three are on the agenda, well, this is the only one I need to recuse myself from, then it would still have to be a majority of the board. That would be 4 votes, 4 people to vote. It would still need to be 3 votes for passage, just as a Robert's Rules of Order, just as an FYI. I guess one thing that I would like to suggest to you is that I fall under certified. So if this is broken out into 2 different areas, thank you, you asked the question I was going to ask on the 2 different, because there's 2 classified versus certified. If we break these into 2 different areas, then I could vote for classified, because I don't fall into that category. Classified would be secretaries, maintenance, I don't know, you can tell me what else falls in there, I'm not certain. Transportation.
Everything.
Child nutrition.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm trying to think of who falls in there. So there are 2 different areas that this is looking at, but I do fall under the certified. So that would be a question, once this is on the agenda, again, I would ask that you recuse me from that. You know, I understand exactly, Jason, what you're saying about we are going to have a retreat at the end of the month, and we will begin budget process that does take a while. They have asked that we go ahead, instead of waiting for next year's budget, to address it in this year's budget. And I would also point out that this is not the one-time money that was used for the or the artificial turf field. This would be an ongoing expense. Once it's approved, the presumption would be it would be in the budget for future years, because you don't want to approve something and then take it away 6 months from now. So that would be something also I think that should be considered in the discussions. I'm sorry that Larry's not here today, because I'd like to know what his opinion is, and so I'm sorry that he's not here. So, do you have some comments?
Yeah, I just had a question. This request is for our current budget year, or is this for, so this would be?
They have requested that we fund it now for this
Okay.
current budget year that we're in, and then it would be a part of next year's budget, or all the future budgets, because it would be ongoing expense. That's how this is written. That's correct?
Okay.
I don't want to speak for them, but
That's why I just wanted to get that clarified.
Yeah, that was my understanding. My understanding from what they said, and again, you can correct me, is that supplements are paid 2 times a year. Half is paid in November, the other half is paid in June. So if there was an increase, then in the June payment, this would be realized. So the June payment would catch this part up and the half that's out there to be paid at the end of the year. there's this lovely little conundrum when you deal with classified or 10-month teachers. We work half of August, but we get paid for the full month of August, which means when we get to June, we don't get paid in June because we've already gotten paid for that. And the supplement comes after that, and that way it kind of evens out the year and makes sure that everything's done correctly and that those of us who work the entire year get the supplement. And if somebody were to leave early, they would not get that other half of the supplement. So I think that's just a statement on how this works. So the idea would be that they would add this to the June payment. That I don't know how you would do classified, though. I guess you would have to do something different on classified because that'd be salary. Right.
So if the decision was to make just to incorporate this into next year's budget, theoretically, the teachers would not see an increase until November.
Correct. That would be correct.
Okay.
Very good point. That would be correct. So, any other questions on this particular one? We have the two other ones, but any other? Yes, sir.
Well, I would like to see, before we vote on this, I would like to get some information from the Board of Education. I feel like that this is as little information as we could possibly have to vote on a $3 million expenditure. And I would like to see what the classifications are and what, how different people are classified. Because I went to the Board of Education meeting where they discussed this, and what they don't, they already gave a raise to non-certified employees out of their own money.
Those are I think those are called classified. Is that right?
Same.
Okay.
Yeah.
So-
Those are the hourly employees.
And are those people that work at the administrative building?
Most of those employees were Kids Plus employees that take care of our before or after school program, our child nutrition program. They could be custodians, teacher assistants. There were maybe 5 clerical positions. Those were all positions that the salary study indicated that those positions were paid below what the very minimum of what we should be bringing someone in at. And we thought that we absolutely should not be paying something below that minimum. So the financial impact was not huge, that we could take that out of our budget, and that was a recurring cost, obviously, and we could deal with that recurring cost. And so to make that right, we were able to do that. A $3 million expense, there is no way we can't create revenue, and so we can't take a $3 million cost. But to take those 260 employees and give them their 10 cent or whatever the salary study said it was, to raise them to a level that is fair, and it's the bottom of the range. There's a range that here's the bottom and here's what's acceptable, and you want to be at the midpoint to be competitive. We're not even anywhere close to the midpoint. We raised them to the bottom. And so that, we felt like we were doing the very minimum. It is the minimum. That's why they call it the minimum.
I would like to see who falls into every one of your classifications, because so part of this is non-certified staff, and this is the old number because it was 1%, and so I would like to see who fits into that category. If you could send that over. I think Chris had asked for some of that information a while ago, and a lot of times I feel like we just don't get any information from the school board, and I feel that way with respect to all the bond information that we're going to talk about in terms of construction costs and things like that. What bothers me really is I don't think the school board regards the taxpayer of Cabarrus County very well. When I sat in the meeting, this was originally proposed as a 1% increase, isn't that right? And that 1% increase would have been a total of $1.957 million. And over the course of 15 or 20 minutes, they decided that it should go from a 1% increase to 50% more, which would cost almost $3 million. So we're going to talk about this more in terms of building costs, and we're going to talk about it with respect to the bond. But it seems to me that the Board of Education just makes up numbers, and they don't regard our taxpayers very well, and they don't regard the obligations that they're asking us for. And I think that's proven by the fact that they come to us month after month with a different project, and some of those projects are prioritized and some of them aren't. And if we pass them, they're happy for us to use our money, and they don't use their money on it. And that bothers me quite a bit on behalf of the taxpayers.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that I understand. What you would like, Chris, you asked about the breakdown between certified and classified. Certified would be people with a teaching certificate or a principal's light certificate. Okay, so we've got general, are those two numbers okay, or do you need more detail? Is that what you want, is more detail of who falls under certified, like teachers and assistant principals and principals, and who's at the education center, and then you want to know what categories fall under classified? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
I want to make sure they know what you're asking for.
I would like to know where every job classification falls into these. Every job classification that will get a pay increase under their proposal, I would like to know whether they fall into the certified
Certified or classified.
and that's what I'd like to know, every job classification.
Okay, so we want job titles such as teacher,
Yes.
maintenance worker, secretary, treasurer, those type. You don't need to know every person's name. You just want to know the titles that fall under each of those.
The generalized position, that's what
Okay.
I'd like to know.
And then that would lead into what you asked for, which is a breakdown of the dollar amount between the two, so that that would match up as you, if they can do that, if they can tell you the titles in there, then they have how much is in classified and how much is in certified.
Right.
Or, yeah, classified and certified. I have to remember what they're called too, so.
Well, and
What else do you need?
Well, I was just going to say, if that information's not easily filtered before our next meeting, I mean, this is an item that we can save for the retreat, because I would like to see this information well before our meeting in 2 weeks. In other words, I don't want to receive the information the day of the meeting before we go into the meeting.
And I asked the county manager, because I'm thinking, without going into my email history, that we received a copy of your salary study. Didn't you emailed that to us? Okay, maybe we can get that email to us again, and we'll just make sure. Sometimes you get further back in your email, and it's hard to find that one document or the one email that you're looking for with an attachment. So would that be beneficial to have the salary study that shows? And I think that's probably going to give you most of the information you're looking for anyway, who the different.
Yeah, I believe everybody's got it. I think Commissioner Osterreich may not have that. I don't know if we forwarded that to you, so it's been a while since we sent it out, so we'll make sure you get it.
I was going to say, I've got the salary study laying in front of me, and there's like every single solitary facilities management position, custodian, locksmith, maintenance worker, carpenter, plumber, it's all broke down, every salary as to what it is, the minimum, the mid, the max. So that should be easily available. As a matter of fact, you can look at this right now if you want to.
Will that show how they are grouped in terms of being certified or non-certified?
And certainly, I would think that staff teachers, certified teachers, it would be quite obvious.
Sure.
I don't think facilities management people would be certified.
Every position that's listed here is a non-certified position.
Right.
All of our teachers and so guidance media, teachers, anyone that has a license is not listed here. But anyone, so in the other category, in the non-certified category, are listed specifically in the salary study. So there's your divide.
Well, if you could do just a list of who counts as certified to go along
Okay.
with what's in the salary study, and then you'll make sure we get the salary study again. And sorry that you didn't get that one. I couldn't remember when we got it. It's been a while. And then that way we'll have that. And then is there anything else that you can think of that you need just based on this request for salaries, for staff compensation? Not salary, staff compensation at this time. Okay. Okay.
Madam Chair, may I address just one of the points that Commissioner Osterreich has made? I think every time we've come before you, we've been very truthful and thankful for all that you've done for Cabarrus County Schools through the years. I know for the 6 years I've been working with you, that's been the case. I think our Board of Education, and I take exception with the idea that they've misprioritized anything over the years you've served in that capacity, and you well know that where we might be the 7th best funded in terms of facilities, I'm not sure where that figure exactly comes from, but I imagine if you reference that back, you would see that probably is very consistent with the amount of growth that occurs in Cabarrus County versus the amount of growth that occurs in other counties. For instance, as we've said, it's a great place to live and work, so therefore you've been challenged, as our Board of Education has been challenged, to put a great deal of money into facilities through the years. It is misleading to say that we have misprioritized. You have no choice as a county commission but to provide adequate public facilities for your children for public education. So it concerns me that the term such as misprioritized would be interjected in this conversation about staff compensation. On another matter, I would say what we're trying to get at with the questions regarding who's on certified, who's non-certified, who's where, it is certainly not my intention to inflate the salaries of anyone in terms of administrative positions, particularly those such as myself. Let me just lay on the table here today, since this has been brought to the attention of the public, that any compensation that I might receive as superintendent as a result of a decision you would make for increased supplement, I would gladly donate that to our education foundation to be used for grants and other such purposes. This is not about helping those that make the highest salaries. This is about helping those that are struggling right now, and I'm not saying those that teachers at the lowest end of the salary schedule are only those that are suffering. But I would say that our teachers are leaving us to go to other systems, and as Ms. Auger said very clearly, they didn't used to do that because it was a wonderful place to work. Now they're hungry, they need help, and I don't think we should be mixing the ideas of building facilities with what we have before us today in terms of the need to pay our folks more. So I can handle a good debate, but I can't handle when things are told in ways that mislead the public. So.
Do you know offhand, and you may not, and that's okay if you don't, or you could get that to us, on average what 1.5% means?
For the average teacher, it's about $675. That's an average, so some teachers are going to make more and some are going to make less, but $675 a year for a teacher. Whereas a
brand new teacher, you're looking at, that one's going to get $350, $400 for a zero.
So it's under.
Yeah, it's if you think 25,000 for a first-year teacher, it's $400.
Oh, right.
Roughly,
Sorry,
is what they would be getting.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
that gives you an idea of what it is. It's just there are a lot of them out there. So,
Madam Chairman, I would also say that that number 7 figure comes from the exact same document that Dr. Shepard quotes with respect to the 114th. It's the very next page in the document. It shows what our effort in terms of facility is. So it's listed on the DPO website. If anybody has any questions, email me. I'll send it to them.
And I'll be glad to answer that as well. Does the same information provide the amount of growth that's occurred in Cabarrus County versus that in Hyde and Terrell and other counties across the state? Are those commissions compelled with the same request that you are to provide facilities for our children? And the answer to that is I'll be glad to inform anyone of that answer anytime. You are an incredible place to live and work. People move here. You have to provide places for the children to go to school. So that's an unfair comparison.
Well, I'd like to make a quick comment as well. That as far as I know, our Board of Education, we have not complained ever about the new facilities that we've been able to build. And the growth has been astronomical. Even through the down cycle, we still had people moving to Cabarrus County. The Board of Commissioners told us we're not building anything for 5 years. And we didn't come and ask for anything in that period of time, even while our schools kept filling up and people kept coming. Well, the time has come. We can't wait anymore. And I will take exception with the comment that our Board of Education does not take into account the taxpayer. I disagree with you vehemently with that. We have a difficult job, just as you do, in balancing what our needs are and how do we handle those needs with full respect that at the end of the day, you guys have to decide what the tax rate is and how it's going to get funded. But we do not take any of that discussion lightly, and we know, I'm a property owner, I know where that money's coming from. So, when you say the Board of Education, and I'm not sitting here, this is staff and administration, I felt like I needed to come to the table if we're going to make comments about the board as a whole. So we are very respectful of the fact that you guys have a difficult job. We're trying to take care of the bottom end. We took care of with our own money. The need is greater than that, and we've come to ask you to help us with that need. And that's no different than anywhere else. If you don't pay your people, you're going to lose them. And that's where we are. We've seen enough to tell us we're at a critical mass, and that's why we came. The other point I'd like to make is, why are we here now? Some of that has to do with the complexities of school finance and when you get your ADM and what the calendar is, and that's why we had the discussion when we did and brought it to you at the time that we did. And if you would comment on that, because you know that much more than I do.
And just an added point is this. There was a $4 million budget request to fund the salary study during the budget session. So this is not the first request that you've seen. Maybe the first request you've seen, but it's not the first request this board has received from Cabarrus County Schools, because the amounts were less. It is less in this request than it was because we matched the request that the county received. The request prior was more in line with what the salary study recommended to get us more competitive. So it was a higher request.
Well,
Okay, yes, sir.
yeah, I'll just, one last comment. I'll say, it is our job. I appreciate you guys being here, and majority of the school board members, I appreciate you guys being here. And, whenever you come forward with a request of this amount, we're going to ask questions. That's our job. Absolutely. That's what we were elected to do. And, if we want to break down the numbers of certified, non-certified, so we can understand whether we want to exclude a group or not, that's our prerogative. And that's what we were here elected to do. We ask questions because that's what we're supposed to do. We're trying to be accountable with the money. So, to your point, Dr. Shepard, I don't think anyone thinks that you guys are trying to inflate the higher salaries. It's ultimately up to us as the elected body to decide, where that fine line is of which group should get an increase, which shouldn't. And, that's the reason we ask these questions. That's the reason we need more information is, we can't just vote yes. And, I've learned a lot just in this meeting as far as when the supplements get paid, why you're coming middle of the school year. So, there's a lot of information that goes without being said. And so until we ask those questions and have this kind of debate, nobody would ever know. So, I appreciate you guys coming, and I think there's a lot more discussion and a lot more information that we'll have. But I don't think any of us here disagree that there should be more money put into the classrooms and to the teachers that will help the students succeed. So, thank you.
Okay, and again, my last comment would be just to, when this goes on our agenda, for an action item, at whatever point that's determined, I would ask that we separate it to certified and classified. Because I can vote for classified, I can't vote for certified. I will ask for your recuse. If you choose to leave it in one item, then that's fine. That's whatever the majority decides. But I would like to make that, it's not in the request from them, but I would like to ask that once we get to that point, so, okay? Let's move to the next one, which is the resolution for the new elementary school funding needs.
Again, Madam Chairman, thank you for hearing our request tonight. We have two requests that relate to facilities, the first being a request for a new elementary school, and I'm once again going to ask Kelly Klutz to begin our discussion.
Oh, thank you. I was going to ask Mr. Whitkey to
Okay,
begin
you
our
do that.
discussion. Is that okay? Thank you.
sort this out in a minute. In looking at a new elementary school, one of the things that we in the school board have talked about, staff in the school board have talked about, is the fact that the prototypical or prototype floor plan that we've been using, the school that we've built numerous times, has sort of reached its age limits. It's been repeated, I believe, a total of 6 times, 6 or 7 times. And we find that with the change in the way education is being delivered and the needs to have a more compact floor plan, we really want to revisit that design. So that's part of the whole initiative in terms of establishing a budget that would support that investigation, as well as obviously building it to today's dollars and building it to today's energy requirements. So as a result, and I should read this. The board has said that whereas the enrollment of Cabarrus County schools continues to increase, having now exceeded 30,000 students for school year 2013-2014, whereas a recent 2013 ORAD study attached shows growth is particularly strong, in the northwest section of the county, where Cox Mill Elementary and Odell Elementary are located and already over capacity, whereas the board has already done redistricting to partially alleviate the overcrowding, whereas there is an immediate need for adequate school facilities to accommodate expected additional school population growth, which is not currently available in the northwest Cabarrus County, whereas Cabarrus County is obligated to provide adequate school facilities for Cabarrus County residents by providing funding for new construction, expanding or renovating various school buildings and facilities in Cabarrus County. And whereas the Site Selection Committee intends to recommend a school site in January of 2014 for a new 1,000-seat elementary school in northwest Cabarrus County, whereas the new school needs to be complete by the beginning of the 2015-2016 school year. As shown on the attached schedule, construction needs to begin no later than, I believe we were saying summer of this year. I don't have that date.
August 1 of 2014.
14, yes, sir. And now, therefore, the Cabarrus County Board of Education unanimously requests the Cabarrus County Board of Commissioners immediately provide funds for construction of this new elementary school in the amount of $20 million.
Okay, let's start discussion. Chris, do you want to start on this one?
I had a couple of questions. So will this school be a replacement for Royal Oaks Elementary? No.
No, this is a new elementary school
For
for growth.
Okay, for
Yes.
growth.
In the northwest.
Okay. Let's see here. I had another question. I can't remember now. Move on.
We'll come back to you.
All right.
Jason, do you want to go next?
When I had looked through, I think this is the perfect example of what I'm talking about in terms of the school board not taking the taxpayer seriously in terms of what their obligation are. And I'm glad that we have the opportunity to talk about this, and I'll show you what I mean so that you don't think that I'm casting aspersions on you without at least explaining it to you. So it had been commented that my numbers were tremendously off and things like that when I proposed the plan. So I went back to the school board and I asked Chairman Kiger if he would send me their actual numbers, their numbers with furniture, land, everything included. I put them into a sheet. Every elementary school over the last 15 years, the average cost of an elementary school in the last 15 years, and these are all big elementary schools, is $15.5 million. They are asking for $21.5 million, which is almost 40% greater than what their average cost is. I just think that's a tremendous waste. The most expensive elementary school that's ever been built in this county costs $17.4 million, so they're asking for $4 million more than that. My plan, I've said that my numbers would be right. My plan gives them $14.6 million is what I had put in my plan, with $1.5 million for land, which is $16.1 million, which means I have $500,000 more in my plan than their average cost, and there's no way that I can support giving them $21.5 million.
The request in this is for $20 million. just to point out.
But-
I know they've had 21.5 before, but,
No, they already have the 1.5
That
million.
has-
They have
okay.
1.5 million for the land that they've already accepted.
okay, that's fine. I just
So
want to make sure.
Total cost
which numbers
21.5
were
million, apples to
G-going.
apples.
Okay. Steve?
You know, in regards to the cost of the facility, you explained that this, and if I'm correct, I think that once you get one of these designs for a school, you are allowed to duplicate it X number of times, and then you are required to update that. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you're saying that time has come. Is that, I'm sure that's, what kind of expense are we looking at there? I'm sure that's adding to the expense of this facility.
It does, yes, sir, because we were, in effect, whenever you repeat the use of an existing school design, we were simply paying for what they call site adaptation of that plan
Right.
to the new site. So the fees were very low for the last half a dozen schools or 5 schools. So you're going to be paying a new architectural fee as a new project would cost, because it's going to be starting relatively new. We hope to utilize a basic design that several architects that we've looked at do utilize, but it would still be taking their, if you will, their general design and making it fit our needs, making it work to our program requirements.
Right. Any ballpark estimate of what that piece of that would be?
We normally would look between 6 and 7% of a fee
Right.
for the
Right.
architectural services.
Right. And if I know that we've had discussion previously that because of the good work that the staff and this board has done budgeting in the past, that we do have cash available, that if we fund this school, it would be a cash project, which we would incur no debt for that, which I'm sure will save us a substantial amount of money over a period of time. I'm looking at the ORED study that you folks did and invited us to come participate in the presentation, and the handout that I received there pretty clearly demonstrates that we've got some capacity issues. And of course, we'll talk about more about this probably in the bond, but for the year 2014, my quick count is that 11 schools in the system are either at, over, or very close to capacity. And I see one here for 2012, capacity 990 students, actual is 1,276 students. So we're not talking about 10 or 15 students in some of these facilities. So I think that this is something that we've got to look at, and we've got to take care of these issues. And I'm glad that we're doing it in a timely fashion. I would hate to be sitting in this chair saying, why are you telling me about this now? You know, we should have been talking about this 2 years ago. So, I think the time is right. As far as the process, just for the benefit of others, walk me through the process of determining how much money we spend on this school. I'm sure there's an architectural design, and then it goes out to bid, right?
Yes, sir. Yes. One of the first things you do is you create an architectural program statement, the requirements of the project.
Right.
And a lot of those are similar to the ones we've used in the past. Some of the new things are the new energy codes that have to be met for the state of North Carolina, as well as some of the long-range energy efficiency items that we would like to see at least considered as part of the school design. There's even been a discussion about what they call a net zero school, which literally means the school is able to produce enough energy by itself to pay for its own energy use and sell back to the grid, or literally have a zero cost for the energy it uses. And those are all very positive things that we'd like to see as a part of this design initiative. Whether or not we can afford all those right now is still in debate, but it's certainly something we want to have the architects and engineers look at. There's a standard process, And one of the things that we have to do is be cognizant of the time frame, because if we get it bid in the early part of this summer or any time during the summer, we're going to be pushed really to complete that school in a 12-month period. That's simple reality. It's the size of the building and the process such that it will take a minimum of 12 months to construct, and more often a little bit more than that. So weather has a lot to do with it, of course. But so our effort is really to find an architectural firm, get them engaged, and move forward with the design as quickly as possible. We still have to go through all the normal review processes, not only by the county, but the state of North Carolina. Those take, in some cases, months to accomplish, so we've got to build that time into the framework. And eventually what we're hoping to do is get this bid by early summer of this year, so that we're under construction by the end of summer of this year and moving forward towards a completion by August of 2015.
So would it be fair to say that when you put this out to bid, if we've budgeted or allocated $20 million, that with all the, I mean, you know, that's the way I would do it. I'd say, you know, in a perfect world, this is the way I'd like for it to look. And these are the things I would like for it to include. It's probably going to come back more than that. And then you'll be in a process of saying, well, this would be great, but we're going to have to cut this. Is that usually the way it works, or do you ever find yourself in a situation where you've been allocated $20 million to build a school, bids come back at 15? Ever had that great problem?
It doesn't happen very often on any project that I've ever been involved with, but the process you're talking about is value engineering. If for some reason it does come back and is over the number, that's where we've got to sit down and make determinations on, you know, wants versus needs. We go in, we set the project up as what we think we need to do to best educate the children that are going to be attending that school. I think we've got construction standards that were adopted by our board, that we actually got some input from the county on site selection and some of the infrastructure piece, so we have that to take into consideration. But as we go through this, we've got our specs and what we want to see, and then we've got to massage the number with the full intention that we don't want to spend a dime over what we're asking for. In fact, we're going to build in any project, any construction project, you better have a contingency, okay? Well, we've got one. We've got one built in. Well, we don't want to spend one dime of that. We don't, but you got to have it. And whatever we don't spend, we're going to revert back. We give it back to the commissioners. We don't keep it. We don't get to just spend it on whatever we want. It goes back to you all. So that's a little bit of how we get to where we're going. And I do want to reiterate, we're not starting a design from scratch. Multiple architecture firms, they have stock plans, for lack of a better term, that you can use, but you have to make site specific. You know, you've got to look at, you know, how do we need to change or tweak it. And it, you know, quite frankly, they're professionals. It costs money to get that done. But that's how you take that piece of it, and then you get it to the bid stage, send it out, and you know, you hope you've done your homework. But there are assumptions to be made. One of them is the bid climate when you send it out. We're not sure what it's going to be. We have a pretty good guess. The other is we're dealing with natural resources that fluctuate on a commodities market every single day. So we don't know what those are going to be, and that rises and falls too. So you take your background and your professional background and you make the best estimate of what you think you've got to do, taking into account it's public money. We know that. We can't just build anything that's over the top, and I don't think we've done that. So and I don't want to. I do want to respond to the 40% number, but do we have any other questions or anything before we go on that? Okay. One of the things, the average cost, anything that's over probably 5 years old, you need to toss, because because of commodities, because of big climate, and because of things such as ADA, fire and life safety, and code requirement changes, that skews those numbers. So I'm not sure if we took the last, well, we haven't built anything 5 years, so that skews that even probably a little further. But that's what we've got to do. We can look at history of what we spent. We can look at the climate. There's documents called RS means. It'll tell you construction costs all over the industry in different markets, and that's other things that we've got to juggle to try to figure out, well, where do we think this is going to fall? And in our particular case, there's some site conditions that we know of that we have to take into consideration, and those are the kinds of things. ADA has driven a lot in the last, since it was implemented, but even in the last 5 years or so, it's driving a lot of construction costs up. There's just more horizontal work you have to do. Fire and life safety, again, is a big one. It gets tremendously expensive. So we do want to be cognizant of the taxpayer, no question about it. I don't think we're asking for a school that's over the top. That's not our background, that's not our history, and I just don't think we've done that.
I think you did a great job of explaining the history. I would also say let's add into the equation that the last two schools that we built, the last two elementary schools we built, was right as the cost or the recession was hitting, and people were very hungry. So they were willing to build those schools for just a little bit of money, or just in order to keep their staff, my understanding, to keep their staff employed through the recession. So it's very difficult to put our finger on exactly what the figure is, but I want to reassure you, as we've done in the past, that as it was stated here, we work very closely with county manager and finance department here, and monies that you've allocated that categorically, if it's for land or if it's for architect or if it's for whatever, if those monies aren't spent, we're accountable to you, and those are returned. I just asked our finance officer, the last two elementary schools, A.T. Allen and Patriots, that we built, we returned over $1 million to the commissioners. Now, you can debate whether we returned it or whether that was just the actual cost, but the bottom line is, we didn't spend all the money you gave us. We were, because we were aware that we had other needs, and if we could return that money to the coffers, then you guys could give it to us for something else or spend it for another need. So again, I want to be just very careful that, and I know we all know the answer to these questions sitting around the table, but the people that are watching this on TV or on the video could leave with the misunderstanding that we're out spending money wildly, and you know that we're certainly not. This is a very reasonable price that we're requesting. If we find out that it doesn't take $20 million, that it takes 19, and we'll involve your staff and whomever you want in the process of designing. But whatever we don't spend, we'll return, and then we'll probably have other needs that we'll need that for. But it's a cooperative process, and it's worked well for the last 6 years.
Chairman Poole, may I respond to that specific comment? Because if I give the average person $40,000 and tell them go out and buy a car that fits your needs, they're going to go out and find a car that fits their needs, and it's going to be less than $40,000. If I give them 40% more than that, give them $55,000, well, they're going to buy a car that's probably something less than 55 and more than 40. And what's happened in the last, particularly in the last about 7 years since stimulus funds have been available for borrowing and things like that, is we've borrowed far more than what they've needed. For instance, I'll just use this as an example. They'll get an elementary school. They'll ask for $21.5 million like they do now for a school that they should build for $16 million. They'll spend $19 million on it. They'll give us back $2.5 million and say, look, we saved you $2.5 million. No, you didn't. You cost us $3 million by that process, and we need to stop doing that. That's why our debt is... That's why today we owe $469 million, is because we have allowed $1 million to seep out the back time and time again, and that has added up. And I don't believe that we should do that on this. I am thrilled to see that people have adopted my idea of paying cash for these schools. I think that's a tremendous step in the right direction. But there is this school can be built for far less than $21.5 million. I think the people of Cabarrus County have elected us to be good stewards with their money and hold people accountable that are spending their money, and $21.5 million for this school is not appropriate.
We've used that car analogy before, and we've said we're not coming asking for Cadillacs, we're just looking for good Buicks, and that's what we want to build again this time.
Chris, do you remember what you were going to ask?
I'm not finished.
Oh, okay. That's fine. I was going to take a turn, but you go next, and then I'll.
Took a couple of turns along the way, that's okay. How realistic is the possibility of a net zero design? I think that, I'm sure maybe that, or I don't know, maybe that costs a little bit more up front, but then you realize pretty significant savings during the life of the building. Is that?
Yes, sir, absolutely. Net zero schools are being built right now as we speak. It's not, 5-10 years ago, it was kind of unusual. I think the first one was done, Dave can probably hit the date on the head, but I was going to say probably 7 to 8 years ago, one of the very first schools was done in Texas, net zero. And they've been building them ever since. We don't have a lot of them right now in our state. We have a lot of schools that are built to LEED, what they call LEED qualifications. And those are certainly energy efficient buildings, and that's kind of the step we'd like to be at, is building to that. But we'd like to look at what it takes to get to a net zero school for the benefit of the taxpayers. Not, if we can come up with a design where we can stay within budget and still give us an extremely cost-efficient school that will begin to pay for itself and pay for its energy use down the road, that would be so much more to the taxpayers' benefit in the long run. I did want to go back just for a moment to your question, because in terms of controlling costs, one of the other things we do, and we do it pretty much all the projects we bid, is we bid in what we call add alternates. And they're parts of a project that we want to, one, identify the specific cost of, and then two, we can use that if we're at budget or below budget, and we can include that part of the project in the work, we will do that. And we've done that. Most recently, we did it on the multiple school camera project, and we were able to afford a majority of it, not everything, but a majority of those add alternates. That's certainly a way that we would look at doing this to contain costs. Because if we reach the point where, let's say we have a bump in the economy and things kind of go haywire in terms of our bidding process, I don't think it'll happen as soon as we're looking to bid this particular project. But down the road, I think costs are going to definitely escalate, and then we're going to have to be much more cognizant of having flexibility in how we bid these, so that we give everyone the choice of saying, do we want to include that or not? No, we can't afford it. We'll forego that in this particular case. I think that's just good common sense way of doing business, is to build in the flexibility in the bidding process to give yourself some choices.
Well, I'm glad we're looking at some of those options. I mean, there's a lot of times that if you spend $1 on the front end to save $5 on the back end, I mean, that benefits the taxpayers, everybody involved, and the net zero. I think that would be a great public relations item for our school system and our county. I think that would be a great educational experience for our children. We're certainly all concerned about the environment. If we have an opportunity to tie those things all up in one package without it costing us extra money and actually realizing savings over time, that'd be a great thing to try to do. I don't. That's why I asked how realistic it was. I'm sure it's challenging.
Well, one of the things that I think part of the movement is the LEED certification is a level of energy efficiency, but you don't necessarily want to pay for the certification, because that basically gives you a medallion you hang in the front of the school that, quite frankly, nobody wants to pay for that. And it's expensive. To get the certification is expensive. Well, you don't do it, but you take the specifications and you try to figure out, you do a cost-benefit analysis and try to decide, do we get some benefit of this on the back end? And that's a good point. There are different specification levels. I believe in Mecklenburg County, they don't do interior walls made of anything but CMU, which is 8-inch block. Well, we don't do that. We have studs and drywall. Well, that's a choice. Our building's cheaper. We're hoping that ours doesn't get torn up like theirs gets torn up. They've made the decision over time, they're going to build it out of block because it's going to last longer. Well, they're going to pay more up front for it. So that's just it's just an equation you have to weigh and decide which way are we going to go. And again, I think our history is that we've made a good call time and time again when we've built new schools.
Right. Well, we certainly don't want to spend any more money than we have to provide good quality schools. I appreciate Dr. Shepherd's analogy. You know, we don't want Cadillacs, but we don't want 20-year-old vehicle like I'm driving either. You know, when we have industry that's looking at this community, that's considering coming here and providing jobs for our citizens and building our tax base, the school's going to be one of the first things they're going to look at. If they went down to Mount Pleasant Middle School, like I did last week, and looked around, that might be a problem. I don't think they would say this is going to be the ideal place that I want to bring my families and children to go to school. Not that there's anything wrong with the education that they're getting at Mount Pleasant Middle School. I don't have any concerns about that. But I do have concerns about the facility and the ability to do the things. I wish I'd have snapped some photographs of a couple places we went. I think people would be surprised. I wish we didn't have to spend money on security cameras. I mean, that's been an expensive item, I know. I wish we didn't have to spend money on security vestibules and other things that I know that you're having to incorporate in the schools. They don't have those things at Mount Pleasant Middle School, and thank goodness, you know, we've not had a disastrous situation. But should that ever happen, this is where people are going to come to ask why. Why didn't you protect our children, and why didn't you do these things that need to be done? So, you know, I know that every one of you on the school board is elected just like I am, and you answer to the voters the same way I do. And so I appreciate the opportunity to be able to ask these questions and have this kind of exchange. So thank you.
Jason, your number, the 14.6, which school was that to you?
For the replacement school.
Okay.
So they have the 1.5 million already in our budget.
Correct.
And we're going to give them 14.6 more.
Okay. And so what was, you said, one of the previous elementary schools, what was the cost?
But we have 8 elementary schools, and people are free to think about these elementary schools and think about, do I feel like that's a subpar elementary school when it was built? Bethel was 14.9 million, Cox Mill was 15.6 million, Harrisburg 14.4 million, Rocky River 13.5 million, Irvin 14.3 million, Odell 15.3 million, Weddington Hills 15.5 million. I'm sorry, Weddington Hills was 14.5 million.
Okay.
And that's 8 schools.
Right. Weddington Hills was built in 1996.
That is inflation adjusted. I'd be happy to give you the actual number.
Okay.
It's well over $10 million, under $10 million
But the point is, since 1996, numerous code revisions and ADA. So even at an inflation-adjusted dollar amount, you couldn't build that school for the inflation-adjusted dollar amount today for that same number.
Okay.
So
you just can't do it.
ADA has required a 40% increase in our building cost.
I don't know if it's 40, but it's a tremendous amount. If you go, there's research out there. If you look at what the costs are being incurred over time of implementing that regulation, it's astronomical.
I've been to Winkler. Winkler's not as expensive as it is because it's ADA compliant. It's as expensive as it is because it has a translucent roof and things like that. How many schools in the state of North Carolina have translucent roofs that are several thousand square feet?
I don't know the answer to that, but I can tell you nobody's ever built a middle school cheaper than Winkler. At least they didn't in the last 5 years, according to the information I got from the architect that designed the building. I don't want to debate that one little issue. What I'm trying to say is you can use the inflation-adjusted dollars, and that's fine, but there are costs that you can't build with the same plan today, even at that number, because there's other things that are in play there. I don't know exactly what the number is, but it's not a one-to-one that you can do.
Well, that's what I was trying to get to see if you felt comfortable that $5 million, the $5 million in addition is what is new cost as far as these ADA or the fire systems or, whatever is new requirements now? Is it, you feel comfortable that it's, around $5 million?
Yes.
For the increase,
Our
yeah.
crystal balls know better
Right.
than anybody else's.
We're not going to know until
Okay.
we
We
get a
don't,
bid.
Well, I know you
we're
said-
doing the best that we can of trying to piece that together. Is, that dollar amount, we're confident that we haven't undershot it.
Right.
I am
Okay.
confident of that. And now, that's debatable whether, should we be asking for more than we really think? Well, the answer is somewhat in contingency, and somewhat, we don't want to have to come back
Right.
3/4 of the way in the project and tell you, hey, we were wrong, because that doesn't do your budget any good, and it doesn't do us.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. You said there's a built-in contingency. Is that based upon percentage of what you think it'll cost? Is there a magic number that's the contingency? What is that? How is that?
We've used 7% contingency, which is a fairly standard number in the industry at this point in the project. It's what you call both a design and a construction contingency in one number.
Okay.
And I, certainly Mike and Jonathan are well experienced in those numbers as well. But, that's something that I certainly feel comfortable with. It is fairly consistent with what we've done in the past as well, in terms of the numbers that we've had on the other projects.
Right. Okay. That's really all the questions I have. I'll go back to the car analogy. Whenever I'm going to purchase a car and they ask me what my budget is, I never tell them what my budget is because they're not going to work with me on the price. So, if we do set a higher number, such as 20 million, and it really only is theoretically going to cost 18 million, well, maybe a builder could inflate their numbers some because they realize that our budget is so much higher. So that's where I say, whenever I go to purchase a car, whether it's Cadillac or a Buick or whatever it may be, I'm not going to give my budget because then they're not going to maybe work with me on the price. So I certainly understand where Jason's coming from, that, with a smaller number, potentially there is going to be savings there, realizing that there may not be additional monies there left over. So certainly understand Jason's point. I understand the concern about contingencies, but I think obviously that's what we're going to have to decide before the next meeting.
Okay, first of all, for Megan, they have on here, they have the ORED study and the construction timeline as attachments for our, whenever this is on our agenda, we just want to make sure that's part of our documents also, so that it's part of our record. Because it's not on this that we have right here. Second of all, or a couple things. Here's the good thing about this particular one, and I will take exception. You're not the first person to say to pay cash for projects. That's been discussed many times, and there are projects that have been paid cash for. So I do want to say that, because that's what you just said, was that you were the one who has proposed that. And yes, you have said it. It has also been said. Okay?
At this time, I think I am the first one to say it about these projects.
Prior to you being a commissioner, that's been discussed numerous times. So just want to allay that it is something that's been done in the past. Now, the good thing about this project is that if we pay cash for it, we have some leeway in how it's managed. We have provided funding for land. It's my understanding that you were close on the land. You're not going to announce it today, of course, but you're very close on negotiating and having property available. Is that correct?
Yes, we hope to have a recommendation for our board soon.
Okay. So, and that's already been funded. They already know that. That's been funded. And when we pay cash for a project, we pay the invoices that come in. This county keeps ownership of the project because the county can file for sales tax refund and the school systems cannot. So therefore, you send the invoices to us, correct? And we pay the invoices. So it's pretty easy to track and see exactly what's being paid. Okay? And that's the reason for it, because there is the sales tax refund, which on a school is substantial when you consider the amount of work going into it, or the materials going into it. Second of all, what I would suggest is that as we continue with this particular discussion, we can fund an engineering and the architect so that they get their design. We agree to fund the architect fee. Architects, I presume, are going to bid, they do not bid for the project. Schools are a little different. What they will have to do is they will interview architects and they will select an architect. And then after they have voted to select an architect, they will then enter into negotiations with the architect on what the architect is going to charge. So we can very much, in discussions with them, come up with a not-to-exceed number to cover the architects. And they're going to bid it. They're not just going to, they're going to negotiate it. Let's say the architect comes in and wants 15% of whatever they come up with. They can turn around and say, no, we're not going to do that, and they can start the process over again. They do have some leeway. But we can easily determine an amount, and we can approve a motion to fund the architect. For the land that you have the funds for, did that include any engineering cost for the land? Site cost?
Yes, it did.
Okay, so.
You guys are approving it
Yeah.
as we make the request.
Okay. With the architect, you don't just need an architect. The architect is going to hire mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, other experts to help design the project. So we can easily, kind of do it in another step. Fund that so that we know exactly what they're going to cost, and we get them off the dime of not having a plan. We can get a plan that they're going to be able to use. This is not the only elementary school that you're going to build in the next 10 years. Would you agree? Okay.
Yes.
I think that's easy for all of us to agree. As far as the cost of the school, they're going to bid it. It has to be competitively bid. So, Chris, that does help with the idea of what the actual dollar amount is going to be. Because I can come in high and I'm not going to get it because I didn't bid. And so they can bid the site work. They can bid the actual construction cost. They can bid out the furniture, fixture, and equipment. They can bid out the technology. So once they bid, we're going to know exactly what those bids are. It's not like we're going to wait until, this much money and then wait and see what happens. Right. So that also addresses the $20 million. The bids come in, and they come in at 17.5, and we can do a not-to-exceed amount, 20 million or wherever we came up with it, and, so that we can get moving on this school. They have a fairly quick timeline. But that's something that we could look at doing, is kind of breaking it into parts and moving us along instead of just staying right where we are. So I would like for us to consider doing that, because they are going to put alternates in. They're going to have contingency money in there, which, we don't want them to spend any of it. You've already said that. But you have to plan that way. And I think it's going to be, easy is not the appropriate term, but I think it is something that Ms. Dubois and staff can verify exactly, because they're going to give us the bills. It's not like they're, going to say, we're not giving them $20 million today and then waiting to see what happens. They're going to get the bids, they're going to get the bills, we're going to get those, and we're going to pay them. So there is some control and some knowledge that we're going to gain through the process. Okay, so my recommendation is that because this is to be paid for, we can move it along instead of staying right where we are. Have you, I believe that you have the option of doing a construction manager at risk process. Is that true? And have you considered doing a construction manager at risk?
We have not discussed that at this point.
Okay. I would be interested to find out how, with your discussions with architects that you're talking with, contractors in the area that may be interested in bidding on the project, do you have anybody that would be interested in doing a construction manager at risk process, and how that would play out? I think that's a good discussion for you to have, to see if that also helps to control the cost, because that is what we're looking at. And I agree completely with you. I put a note about LEED. I think it's important, Steve, that they incorporate savings, future savings, whether they're energy savings or material savings or air quality savings, any of those savings, as long as the return on investment makes sense. But if the payback on it is 50 years, it might not be something that they want to do. And I completely agree with you. It is great to be able to jump up and down and say, look, we're silver LEED certified. But if that's because you're going to pay for a plaque to go in the front lobby that nobody's going to notice when they walk by it, I'm not certain how much value I put in that. You can tell everybody that you have met those standards, but I'm not certain about that process. So that would be my, we need to do not wish to cut short any of our conversations. They have a meeting tonight, that we have one more item for them that we need to talk about, which is the bond item, and we need to, help make sure they can get to their meeting.
If I can make one more comment, and then I am going to scoot to get to my meeting. We absolutely have an obligation, a moral obligation to the taxpayer to only build what we think is absolutely necessary for a quality, adequate public education for the citizens of Cabarrus County. I am not interested in the least in building something that we show off all over the state or gets the front page of a magazine or gets us kudos. Not interested. Our job is to make sure we build something that the children can be educated in with whatever facility we think meets that needs, and making sure we've got the taxpayer in mind. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
And I will say that in the audience, we have two architects who have previously built schools for Cabarrus County Schools, so they have heard a lot of this conversation, and I think they are very much aware, if they want their business, some of the things that they're going to have to think about. So I'm glad that they're here today. I won't call you out. I'll be nice and not call you guys out, but they're here to also hear our conversations. Okay?
May I respond to your
Yes.
suggestion? I would not be in favor of turning them loose to have architectural drawings done, because I think that unless they have an idea of what their end budget's going to be, you are going to get a significant different project if you have a budget that's 40% more or a budget that's 40% less. And I would also say that, Dr. Shepard, I acknowledge that you said that you work with the county and things like that. I just don't have a lot of confidence that the county, as a government or the school board, has been accountable to the taxpayers with respect to the buildings that we've built. And I've talked about that time. Go look at the Health Alliance building. Look at the jail. We have spent too much money on facilities, and this $5 million is twice the funding of the school, of the teachers. So this was precisely my point. We spend money on facilities, 40% more than what we need to spend, and then we don't have the money left to spend on our teachers, and that bothers me, and I'm not going to support that.
And my only comment would be, we did not design the Health Alliance building. We've had this discussion. Yes, I understand that. We do not have that. It is their responsibility, it's the Board of Education, to determine the programming needs for schools. That is there by the legislature. That's one of their charges. That is not our charge. Our charge is the dollar amount. And I think we need to understand that that is their responsibility to determine class sizes and materials that they need in a school, computers that they need, furniture that they need, what they need in that school, the number of classrooms based on programming needs. They offer different things at different schools. It's not everything at every school, and I think that we do need to recognize that that is their responsibility. So, but your points everybody's points are very well noted, and I think at this time, if there's anything, what I would ask is that you look at construction manager risk. Let us know what you think. What I would propose that we do when we are ready to make motions on this, and of course, Mr. Burridge is not here tonight, is that we look at doing it in the step stage. We can talk till we're blue in the face on how much the school's going to cost, but until they get to a point where they can bid it, it's good estimates, but it's still an estimate. And I would like to see us move somewhere, because if we're still having this discussion 6 months from now, that school is not opening. And you honestly, you don't want to start, you want to have a school open, ready to roll in June when everybody goes home, so that they can figure out what's wrong, or not necessarily what's wrong, they can figure out how to get into it, they can get staff in there and have it ready to go when staff shows up in August, because you've got to get furniture and equipment and all the technology, the computers that are set up, re-imaged, everything that they have to do. So you don't want to be moving a school in December, and frankly, you don't want to move it in January. I mean, elementary schools, they don't do semesters. They're all year long, and if you're going to take them from one spot and pick them up and move them, that it can be done. It's not a easy thing to be done. So I think that the timeline is we need to be cognizant of, okay? It's easy if I'm moving into a house, I can move into a house whenever it's ready. It's difficult to move 1,000 students or 800 students into a school. So the next item that we have is the resolution in support of the bond referendum. Would you like to address that?
We just move quickly to our finance officer.
That discussion leads us perfectly into this resolution. This resolution is support for a bond referendum. Again, I'll just go through the points where Cabarrus County Schools continues to increase and now exceeds 30,000 students. Cabarrus County is obligated to provide adequate school facilities for Cabarrus County residents by providing funding for constructing new, expanding, or renovating various school buildings and facilities in Cabarrus County. Whereas adequate school facilities are not now available in Cabarrus County. Whereas Cabarrus County Schools has currently identified constructing, expanding, renovating, and repair needs that exceed $250 million and continue to grow. It is necessary to provide funding for the most important needs in Cabarrus County, immediate needs in Cabarrus County as addressed by this resolution. Whereas it is necessary to provide additional school facilities by constructing, expanding, and renovating various school buildings and facilities in Cabarrus County. Whereas Mount Pleasant Middle is badly deteriorated and a replacement needs to be built. Portions of Royal Oaks Elementary, Coltrane Webb Elementary, Central Cabarrus High School, and the Glenn Center, or the old Concord High School, are badly deteriorated. Whereas a number of the schools throughout the county are in need of renovation and repair. Whereas a bond referendum is the appropriate way to finance these projects. Whereas Cabarrus County Board of Education wishes to join with the Cabarrus County Commissioners in presenting a bond referendum to the public that will address these capital needs of repair. Cabarrus County Board of Education unanimously resolves to request the Cabarrus County Board of Commission to place a bond referendum on the May 2014 ballot, which includes the following items for the Cabarrus County Schools for $60 million. First one is replace Mount Pleasant Middle School. Second, replace elementary school in the Royal Oaks vicinity. And the third is capital improvement projects at Coltrane Webb Elementary, Central Cabarrus High School, and the Glenn Center, or the old Concord High School.
Jason, you want to start on this one?
Sure. I had gone to the December 2nd meeting. People are free to look it up on the YouTube if they want to look at some of these things. But as their resolution itself states, they have $250 million in needs. These were the quotes from the Board of Education members. Carolyn Carpenter, this bond, talking about the bond, this is just a drop in the bucket. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Dr. Phillips, there's going to be a phase 2 where we go after improving the other schools in our district. I don't think we should let people think this is the end. Barry Shoemaker, maybe 2 separate bonds, a bond that deals with the schools and a second bond that deals with repairs. Lynn Shue, this is not going to be a permanent fix by no means. What we are asking here is not going to take care of the thing, and it might be that it will have to be done in phases, and it might require another bond referendum at some point in the next couple of years. I think Mr. Burnett had suggested that as well, and Blake Kiger. Whatever number we come up with, literally, if you hold the list, it is not enough, but we've got to pick a number. So this is $60 million. What's the plan for the rest of it? Does anybody have one?
I think the school board is looking at, you've said what their plan is phasing it, but, this is the beginning of a conversation.
So we're just going to have a lot of bonds. We're going to borrow a lot of money after this one.
That's not part of this request. This request is for one bond. But let's be honest. Over the next 20 years, there are going to have to be more schools built than what they've asked here. So that's a discussion, I think, for future boards to decide what they're going to do and how they're going to address the bigger need. We have this specific request from them at this time.
When we went and saw Governor McCrory, I believe you were there, Chris was there, I know, he said that one of the reasons that he was so successful in Charlotte was he came up with a 10-year plan, and then they implemented the plan, and they're still doing that. And we don't ever come up with the plan. We vote on things like this where we go put the taxpayers on the hook for $60 million, and we've got no plan for what comes next. And that is why we owe $469 million, and our debt service has increased, and our tax rate has increased by 25%. Lynn Shue told me that the plan is essentially what the early 2000s looked like, where we were borrowing $50 to $80 million a year. Now, if you take that and add that onto the debt that we have now, you're starting to look at $750 million. And our debt service payment, as it is now, is $42 million. What does that look like at $750 million? How are we going to pay our teachers more if we have to continue to borrow money? And that spikes our debt service payment. This first $60 million spikes at $9.3 million. What does the next $150 million look like? Is that going to spike at $20 million? All of this money comes from the same place. And what this plan does and what your plan does as it exists now is it takes all of the revenue that we get in the future and requires all of that revenue to go to paying for previous debt. That's not helping our children. That is a tremendous disservice to the children. So we can talk all we want to about helping children. Saddling them with $750 million in debt is not helping our children. The genius of my plan is that it only requires a flat budget. With a flat budget, we can accomplish all of our goals. It provides $206 million over the next 10 years to fund this number. And then, as we see growth in tax revenue, we take the growth in tax revenue and we can use that to fund things like higher teacher pay and lower classroom sizes. And we can use that in the operations side. But what you have right now is there's one pool of money. And when I said earlier that we are prioritizing facilities over teachers, that's exactly what this bond does. This bond takes that one pool of money and depletes it to facilities instead of allowing it to go to our teachers. And that, we would be negligent if we passed this bond.
Steve?
I think that the needs have been clearly demonstrated. You know, the thing about a bond referendum is the fact that we have an opportunity to explain to our citizens what the funds will be used for, what the alternatives are. Jason, you have referred to your plan a number of times, and there are, of course, a lot of other pieces to that plan. So a pay cut for all county employees, which is what I recall that was proposed in the plan when they pick up when they pick up part of their health care costs with no increase in salary, I would define that as a pay cut. So there are other parts to that plan that have to work as well. The thing about this bond referendum is we have to explain and answer these questions to the taxpayers. If the taxpayers do not vote for this bond, then it will not happen. We'll have to come up with an alternative plan. So I am in favor of extending that opportunity to our taxpayers to ask us the questions about how these funds will be spent and what the alternatives are, and then let them direct us as to whether this is something they desire or not. So I would be in favor of going forward with it.
Chris? You in favor of, I mean, I don't know where you want to go with this. This is their request, and just trying to get feedback on,
Right.
or what other information you might need from them.
We're not taking a vote tonight, correct?
No, sir, we are not, well, the only way we would take a vote tonight is to suspend the rules to
Right.
take a vote.
Right. Well, I certainly understand what Commissioner Morris was saying, that, this is, if this does go out to the voters, then it could be a directive of whether or not to borrow this funds for, well, capital improvement projects and new schools. But also, that's part of our job too. We've been voted into this office and directed to be knowledgeable on all aspects of this issue. And this bond isn't just this bond isn't just the $60 million. We're looking at, our full budget, how it affects our budget, our debt in the future. There's a lot of things that we're aware of that the voter who goes out to vote on this bond isn't aware of. And we're a little more well-diversed on each facet of this issue. So, it is something big to think about. And I don't think there's any more information I need, other than I'd be curious of what the breakdown of the 60 million would be, the total amounts, and particularly what the capital improvement projects would be. That's the only additional information I would need.
Okay. What I would like to ask, I know that it's old, okay, but there was previously a study done about Mount Pleasant Middle School and replacing it. And I don't know if you're updating it with the actions that you have this month that the school board is looking at, some research that you're doing on facilities. So if we could get a copy of the previous report, I have said for at least 10 years now that Mount Pleasant Middle School needs to be replaced. So I think that we need to address that issue, and I think we need to address the issue of Royal Oaks. We've talked about that a number of times. So anything that you have would be helpful to me, and I think all of us.
I do have
yeah.
one. Okay. That's why I'm kind of curious about the Glenn Center. What sort of capital improvements are wanting to go to that facility? Just curious about that.
Have you determined at Coultron Webb, Central Cabarrus, and the Glenn Center, which I presume the Glenn Center is the auditorium, but that it may be more than that too, but have you had discussion to determine what those projects really mean, which is what you're asking? More detail on this? Has the school board made any determinations?
What is before the school board for this evening's meeting is a discussion about hiring consultants to look at the detailed plans for those particular buildings. We can give you the breakdown as we allocated it to create this part of the list for the capital improvements. And honestly, that there's a lot of detail that needs to be developed over time. Sort of going back to our discussion initially about the elementary school. We know we have to design one. It's a question of what that ultimately becomes. It's the same thing with these improvements. You'd be designing ultimately to the dollar in this case, because there are many pieces of each one of these projects, and we would be looking to do the most we can for the money available. But certainly in Mount Pleasant, we're looking at a complete replacement of that facility, and that's certainly the largest of the portions of it. But we'll give you a breakdown so you can.
Well, that's why I'm curious if at the Glenn Center, if that's added to the list of what monies left over would go to that. Well, there can't be much left after a middle school, elementary school, improvements at Central Cabarrus. I mean, what possibly?
I have the numbers as they were discussed. It was $21.5 million for the new elementary school, $26 million for Mount Pleasant, and then $8 million for the Coultron Webb, and $4.5 million for general maintenance.
Oh, okay.
But I think what I was trying to get at, which is I think your question is, have they had the opportunity to specifically break those projects down? And the impression I have now is that maybe you've identified some areas that you have some concerns with, but that the school board has not specifically identified exactly what those components would be yet. Because you're looking at getting some consultants to help you with that process. Am I correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I mean, that's what I read. I just want to make sure I read the same.
And so now, when will these consultants begin? Because if the bond doesn't pass the commission board, will money be spent on these consultants already, or?
Depending on what the board approves, that is a distinct possibility.
Okay, I know tonight's a work session, but their general meeting will be before our general meeting. So theoretically, if the school board votes next week to spend money on consultants, and then the very next week we do not approve the bond, then what happens to that money that was spent on the consultants?
I would hope that, based on the conversations we're having this evening, that our board will understand the necessity to move forward with the planning. It's been a significant problem in the past in terms of defining priorities of projects and overall cost of projects. Until you've had something, especially in the case of some of the complex problems we're talking about in these schools, it's difficult to just estimate what those might be. You need to really dig into the problem. You need professionals to look at the systems and determine building systems and longevity and all. It's not something you can do on a piece of paper over a cup of coffee. And that's really what I'll be trying to, and I'm not sure how much convincing I need to do with our board. Our board, we have had a number of discussions on it. We've talked about the larger facilities assessment study, and these are the individual projects before the board that we're asking for assignment to specific consultants to work on. Those plans, much like Chairman Pohl mentioned, we had a Royal Oak study. Granted, it's old, but that's exactly what we're going to be doing, is we're going to be stepping off from that point and looking at now new code implications, changes in needs for educational purposes, and modifying that document so that it is current and presents the needs.
But
Mount Pleasant, I'm sorry.
But the consultants that's being discussed, they'll go into the Glenn Center and see what needs to be repaired? Is that what? That's,
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so what I'm asking is that if the school board discusses that tonight, they approve the consultants at the general meeting in 1 week, and then theoretically we do not approve the bond, then there's no need to hire those consultants. Is that correct?
Not unless we all really want to have the same kind of circular conversation in the future. My hope is that we will drive it forward, do the work that needs to be done, and have that document available for making decisions like this.
When the funds are available.
When the funds are available. But
so,
that's not my decision. I'm simply presenting it.
Right.
hoping the
I
board
understand.
will
I'm
agree
just
with me.
asking the question.
Certainly.
Okay.
We've talked about that it would be very, we have our 5-year, our CIP plan.
I understand.
And I think, and I just read
Right.
their agenda because we got the link to go to their agenda and see what they're discussing.
Right.
So the impression I have is that the more information they can get to us to get it into the CIP plan, whether it is roof replacement, what's the life cycle of a roof? We've had this discussion. So at what point do we need to plan 3 years from now that we need to know that this is coming up and we need to address it? So then that's at least the impression I have from reading your agenda, is that if your board approves hiring consultants, it's to get you more information, which then you will share with us for information, so that we can make better decisions and not be chasing something around. That's the impression I had from reading the agenda item over the weekend, so.
Yes, ma'am. That's
that-
the intention.
Yeah, I understand. So, well, do we do the same at the county? Whenever you say consultant, do you mean like contractor? Or?
No, in this case, it would be architects and engineers that would be hired. It could be a contractor, depending on the need, but it would be a group of professionals typically led by architects and engineers.
Okay.
So as far as my comments on this request for the bond, the reason this is here is because they have passed the motion and they've requested it, and therefore it's before us to discuss. My comments, I'm going to ask Pam if she'll weigh in on this. One of the components of this request is that this be placed on the May primary ballot. We had asked, or I had asked, I know there was a conversation previously about with our bond council, because originally, sorry, school board members aren't here for me to look at them, but originally I thought the request might be November, in all honesty. And I know I had a conversation with Blake, I believe, or maybe Lynn, Blake and or Lynn, about trying to get something done by May, which I was concerned about that actually being really feasible. So I had asked for us to check with the bond council and find out what that meant in the process. Can you weigh in on that for us, please?
Yes, I had a conversation with Steve Cordell last Thursday, and it is not feasible for us to have a May bond referendum. In order for us to do that, we would have had to have had all the information from Cabarrus, Kannapolis, and RCCC in December, to have gone to the local government commission, to have a conversation with them, for tonight for you to have made a decision on how much you would have done a bond referendum and passed resolutions this evening. So no, we cannot do that in May.
Okay, so that answers one question. Second question, did you ask if there's a referendum in November, when would we have to make a decision in order to have that in November?
Thank you for Mr. Osterreich. No later than May 23rd, we would have to go to the local government commission with a concept of what the two school systems and the community college would need to be able to have a preliminary conversation with them no later than May 23rd, and then we would start the process in June with all the different dates that were laid out in the fall retreat agenda. And that schedule still stands.
And the reason that I ask things, we do have a viewing public that is not here with us. They do not have access to the documents, Chris, as you mentioned. We have access to documents, and so that was the whole point of asking Pam to give us that information again so that we knew what the timeline was. So May is not workable. May is not doable. And I also believe firmly that all 5 of us need to make those decisions and not 4 of us. So if you will relay that back, that the timeline won't
My
work.
understanding was that if you don't make a decision tonight, that could not be the case. Is it impossible tonight for us to move forward with a May request?
We did not have a discussion with the local government commission, and the only thing we could move forward with tonight would be Cabarrus County Schools on a bond referendum alone.
Okay.
That's fine.
We're good.
I mean, we can't speak for the others, but we're here in time to make it happen tonight. I think you're under a tight timeline, but.
But we did not meet with the local government commission in December to tell them what your requests were.
Have we, you can answer or you can answer, have we reached out to, or has Kannapolis City Schools or Rowan Cabarrus Community College reached out to us or us to them concerning and understand? This is the part 2 of the discussion, if you will, of the other 2 entities that have already told us that they have needs. Where are we with that process?
Yeah, I've talked with Dr. Kane and Dr. Spalding. Both of them are very interested in being a part of the process, and that they will be getting us their list of needs at the appropriate time, depending on when we request it. So we've already got preliminary lists, so we just, but I have talked to them, and they're both very interested in the process, and they want to be included in the process.
Okay. And I also think that it's important, as a large decision as this is that impacts our budget, that we do get all the information. And we have a 5-year budget, which you guys know. The only year that really counts is the one that you're in. The other ones are projections. So we can project out all we want to. We can project out revenues. We can project out expenditures. The further out you get, the less valid those projections are, I guess. I mean, I know staff does as good of a job as they can, but nobody expected the recession, and I keep getting told that the economy's just doing great, and most of the people that I talk to would question that statement. So I think that those are all things that we need to discuss and consider when we're looking at this. I will say that I believe that the people of Cabarrus County, if we are going to move, I believe that Mount Pleasant Middle School, Royal Oaks needs to be replaced, and that there are other projects that have been identified that need to be addressed, and that we need to decide which projects we will pay cash for and which projects may or may not need financing, and how we're going to go about it, because the needs are not going to diminish. If the idea of a bond at the November ballot is one that we want to pursue, then I think that it is a valid or validation of the process to put it on for a vote, and we'll find out what people of Cabarrus County want to do. We have had bonds before that have failed, and we've had bonds before that have passed. And there can be lots of tours at Mount Pleasant Middle School and Royal Oaks to make the case for those two, because I don't think any, honestly, I'm glad that you said you've been out to Mount Pleasant Middle School. Went out there a number of years ago, and I still remember a young man who was in middle school there who said, when will I get a new middle school? And I looked at him with a straight face and smiled and said, not in your school years. And that has come to pass, because that was about 10 years ago when he came, and I do not remember his name, and I'm sure he has graduated from college by now or very close to it. So, but those are some things that we seriously do need to address as far as I'm concerned. Commissioners, on those 3 items for Cabarrus County Schools, are there any other comments, any other information you need? Any other questions that you might have at this time?
I will just say, I know we've had a lot of discussion here and different opinions, and I think ultimately I think we all have the same goals, that teachers should have pay increases. I think that we all agree that the schools have a lot of needs as far as new facilities, repairs to the facilities. It's just all in how we get to that point. So I think that's what the discussion's all been about, but at least we basically all agree on the end result. It's just how to get there. So.
The only other thing I would say is that we do have the request before us. We would need a motion to, if a majority would like to take action on the bond referendum tonight, in light of what we've been told from Ms. Dubois, we would need a motion to suspend the rules. So at this time, I would ask if anybody wants to make a motion, or if we're just going to keep proceeding with the agenda.
I thought Pam said that we haven't talked to bond or to the
She did.
governance office anyway, and so that was a necessary step in the process.
I also don't have any of the resolutions prepared by bond counsel.
I'm just asking that in the event somebody wanted to make a motion. I'm not expecting a motion, to be honest with you, but I don't want to close the door on the discussion as far as that goes. Okay. So I presume we don't have a motion to suspend the rules tonight. So therefore, let me ask if we can take about a 10-minute break, please, and then we will come back and start with item 4.4. Thank you.
Thank you.